Hey guys! Welcome back to my little corner of the internet. Today, we are going to be talking about one of my favorite TV shows, Heartstopper. Before we get started today, just a little warning, we're going to be talking about some serious topics today, like eating disorders, self-harm, and mental health struggles. So if you're not in a place to hear any of that right now, no worries at all. Head to my channel, there's lots of lighthearted stuff on there that you can watch instead. Also, in case it wasn't obvious, I'm not a trained professional by any means, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. These are just my opinions and my thoughts. And last disclaimer, spoiler alert for Heartstopper Season 3. Alright y'all, let's get into today's topic. So make yourself comfy, grab a little drink, and let's get started. So I am really interested in the topic of mental health, especially queer mental health. I wrote a big article about body image issues for one of my final projects for one of my journalism classes last year, but also I'm gay and mentally ill, so I feel pretty qualified to talk about these topics. These topics are really relevant to me, and I think that by discussing these kinds of issues, we can bring light to them and make the world a better place. So I personally have been in a lot of the situations kind of shown in Heartstopper from all kinds of perspectives, whether I'm the one that's going through it or I'm helping somebody else. And I like that the show covered these issues from all different angles. And I really liked how they showed the recovery process for mental health struggles as well, as opposed to just introducing it as a problem or using it as a plot point and then never kind of resolving it. I feel like a lot of shows, especially young adult shows, introduce issues like this but don't fully resolve them, and I don't think that's really helpful for real life people that are going through these kinds of things. Like in Young Royals, spoiler alert, they say, "Oh, August, you have an eating disorder," and we see him struggle with body image and eating, but it's never really resolved. Nothing ever really comes of it. And in Ginny and Georgia, if I remember correctly, they did a better job at addressing self-harm, but it's been years since I watched that show, so I don't remember. But I remember there was the one character that was struggling with eating issues as well, and there was never any kind of resolution to it. There was no recovery, there was no getting better. They didn't even directly acknowledge it as an issue, I don't think. There's a really fine line between showing mental health struggles as they are and glamorizing it. I think that romanticization, that glamorization is very prevalent in media, especially on certain corners of social media. And in real life, mental health struggles are not plot points. They're not used for character development. They're serious issues, deadly issues. Over 10% of people with eating disorders will die from them. And so I think it's really important to cover these issues in a well-researched and educated way. I think with eating disorders specifically, they're commonly thought of as a problem that wealthy, upper-class white women go through. And I thought it was really interesting how Heartstopper showed that that is not always the case. I don't think a lot of people know this, but sexual minorities are between 2 and 4 times more likely to have a lifetime diagnosis of anorexia, bulimia, or some form of binge eating disorder compared to straight heterosexual counterparts. And I think that the anxiety of being a minority goes hand in hand with that. Obviously, if you're a minority in any sense, the world often feels like it's not built for you. And generally, it's going to be harder for you to experience, which causes anxiety and a sense of a lack of control, especially if you're a closeted queer person. And when you don't have control, a lot of people use food as a way to exercise control. And I think that Heartstopper did a really good job of showing that eating issues and disordered eating is not just a product of, oh, I want to look like this person in a magazine. I think that the cinematography and the thought that went into demonstrating what it feels like to go through an anxiety spiral or some other kind of mental health struggle in Heartstopper was really well done. The scenes where Charlie's eating and the whole room kind of goes dark and there's scribbles all over the screen, and it shows that in that moment, food is all he can think about, and it's overwhelming and anxiety-inducing and scary. And the creators of the show did a really good job of showing that visually when you can't make the audience directly feel exactly how a character's feeling. It's very clear that Alice Oseman and the creators of the show put in the work to do the research and show what it's like having mental illness in a very well educated and well thought out way. I do kind of wish that they included the body image aspect as well. I feel like especially between men who date men, there's a lot of focus on body image. Even the way that queer men categorize each other by body type is very prevalent, and I don't think that's really helpful for the community, but that's a whole other can of worms that we're not going to talk about today. But I think that a lot of the time the world rejects queer people, and so the line of thinking is that if I can be as conventionally attractive as possible, then I'll be at least considered desirable within the community. which is a flawed perspective, but I feel like that also does happen a lot, just because there is such a large focus on body image in certain aspects of the queer community. Now, clearly this isn't the case in Charlie's story, but I think that it's still really important to mention because it all goes hand in hand. We don't exist in a vacuum, and these issues don't exist in a vacuum. Everything influences each other. I read this article recently where Kit Connor was talking about how when he was cast as Nick, a lot of people on the internet were criticizing his body and saying that he wasn't muscular enough to play the character. And so he started working out and trying to change the way he looked, which is incredibly ironic to me because, like, one, why are we still making comments about people's bodies? Like, that is tired. It's tired. But also specifically fans of the comics making remarks about his body. Like, did we miss the entire point of the books, mamas? Like, let's be serious right now. I think that the most important thing that they showed in Heartstopper, though, was the recovery process. The recovery stage is not something you see a lot of in TV, and it's not something that's talked about in real life a lot. I feel like it's stigmatized. It seems like things are getting a bit better with the talk of, you know, getting a therapist and talking to someone about your issues. I feel like that's becoming a lot more common, but generally it still feels very stigmatized to talk about mental health. I think that if I were, you know, a young and impressionable teen that was self-harming or something, and I saw Charlie go and get the help that he really needs, that could definitely encourage me to seek help. When Charlie went to the mental hospital, it wasn't some scary, insane asylum horror movie where they strap you down and inject you or whatever. I've never been in an inpatient facility, but I know people who have, and yeah, while it may not magically fix every issue that you have, I think that the fact that Heartstopper showed it as a possible treatment option was really cool, and I hope it contributes to dismantling these stereotypes about mental health facilities, as well as dismantling the stereotypes about people that seek treatment in them. You know, Charlie went to the inpatient facility, and it wasn't awful, and it did help him, and I think that's a really important thing to show people that may be going through mental health crises. Just for people to know that there are options out there, and it may not be what you expect, is really important. Additionally, the way that the show demonstrated that asking for help is not giving up by any means. In fact, a lot of the times it's harder to ask for help. I like how it gave viewers a kind of step-by-step guide on how to ask for help. When Charlie wrote down what he was feeling and had Nick go with him to talk to his parents, I think that's really important for young viewers to know how to do. Mental health is only getting worse, especially since the pandemic hit. In the years since then, eating disorders have just about doubled, isolation has increased, feelings of loneliness have increased, and so it's really important to know how and when to ask for help. On the other side of things, when you're supporting someone who is struggling, I noticed how the show highlighted what to do for people. When Nick is on vacation with his aunt and she gives him the step-by-step list of how to talk to Charlie about getting help and about how he's feeling. That's so important because chances are, if you're not going through this kind of thing yourself, you know people that are. And so if I had watched this show when I was 14, I probably would have been able to provide better help to people that were seeking it. Additionally, they very explicitly said you can't love someone's mental illness away. I think that's so important to hear. That's very true. And as one person, there's only so much you can do. Obviously, Nick and Charlie were getting a little codependent on each other, but knowing what's not your territory and what you can't do is just as important as knowing what is your job. I think just the way that they handled this entire season could give young viewers the courage to ask for help when they need it. And on that note, if you are struggling with your mental health, I encourage you to go to Psychology Today or National Eating Disorders Association and find help that can connect you to the resources that you need to get better. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'd really love to know your thoughts on this season and what you think about how Heartstopper handled mental illness. Please let me know in the comments. I really look forward to reading your guys' thoughts. I can't really think of any other shows off the top of my head that dealt with mental illness as well as Heartstopper did. So if you have any recommendations, let me know in the comments as well. I'd love to hear them. Thank you again so much for watching this video. If you want to see more videos like this, let me know and subscribe. God bless. I will see you in 1 week with a new video. You gotta finish that heart for me. Bye, guys.